Um, right. So just dive right in. So our lesson objectives for today. So we're going to continue to build on top of last week's work. What we're going to do is we're going to create and populate an Excel file. We're going to read data from the Excel file, and we're going to visualize data with Matplotlib. Okay. So the first actual visual output we're going to have in our code. So we're going to create a basic sales data manager using Excel. So we're going to allow the user to write a hard-coded sample sales data to an Excel file. So what we're going to do is we're not going to ask the user to input data and then we're going to display it. We're going to have a set of data that we've put in ourselves and we're going to visualize that. And then what your homework will do is try and get you to change that using the knowledge that you've built over the past few weeks to be able to ask the user to input data, store it in the right way, and then display it. Okay, so we're going to allow the user to read and display sales data from the Excel file. We're going to implement data visualization to create a simple sales chart from the Excel data. So, reminder, you're not expected to memorize everything we covered today. Right, the first thing we're going to look at is some libraries. So when Python doesn't have functionality to do something, just similar to like how when you didn't know, like back in the day, if you didn't know any bit of information, you would go to a library to try and find out more. So similarly, Python does the same thing. So it can import in libraries of information that it can then use and modules. So Matplotlib is one of them, and Matplotlib is a plotting library for the Python programming language. So it's used to create graphs, and it's numerical mathematics. So it can do data processing as well, and it's an extension NumPy. So it's an extension of NumPy. So NumPy is the one that handles a lot of the maths for Python, and Matplotlib is just the visualization aspect of it. And then we've also got OpenPyXL, and this is a Python library to read and write Excel 2010, XLSX, XLSM, XLTX, XLTM files. So if you guys are all familiar with pretty much any Excel file or Office work pretty much that uses Excel files, you'll see these are the file extensions we use. In order to get Python to connect with them, we use this library, OpenPyXL. So I'll show you guys how we import that in and how we use that. So first we need to open up Replit or Trinket. So I'll just open that up and show you guys here. Hopefully everyone's managed to get on. I'm just going to send it in the chat as well. So if anyone doesn't know.
Can I just ask you to go to the very first intro page with what we're doing today? I copy it down and it wasn't fast enough.
The very, very first one?
Just the one with, this is the goals for today.
Okay. This one?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. That's it. I'm done. I just missed the last bit.
Awesome. No worries at all. Just bear with me. Right. So you guys should be on Trinket. I've just sent the link in. So yeah, this is where we're going to be writing our code. If you're using something else to write your code, that's absolutely fine as long as you know it works. Right. So the first thing we're going to do is for the two libraries that we want to use, we want to import them in. Okay. So very simply for the first one is we're going to import OpenPyXL. All right. And that is very simply how we do that import. I'm just going to make the font a bit bigger so everyone can see. And the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to import. So Matplotlib is a huge library, so it's able to plot loads of different things. So what we want to do is just to save memory and make the program faster, we want to just import the bit of the library that we need. So import matplotlib.pyplot. So the bit that we want is the plotting bit, so we can visualize a graph. And rather than write
a question.
Yes,
how do you figure out which kind of library do you need to a task?
So it just depends on the functionality of what you're trying to do. So if we're trying to work with Excel, we know we want to use a library that connects to Excel. So we've got open.
I
Yes.
meant to ask, like, do you have something, a library which is like describing which is library what now or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good question. Right, let me show you. So in the
Start
official
from.
Python standard library, you can see here, you've got a bunch of what different import you can import in, and you can basically go through this and figure out what you need to be able to do and what you need to.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you to showing.
No worries. So I can send you guys this link as well. So you guys, if you want to read,
Thank you.
no worries.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
And what you guys can like do as well is, so let's say I want oh, I don't want superseded module one. So let's look at turtle graphics. So if I open this up, it will not only show you this, but it'll give you a tutorial as well. So you can see here, it will guide you through what.
I tried this, is really fun.
Yeah, Turtle's amazing.
It's
Yeah, it's great.
practical. I think kids really love it.
Exactly. So for our kids course, for our half-term code camp, we always have a lesson on Turtle because the kids absolutely
Uh,
love it. But yeah, it
I
makes
thought
it more fun to
I
learn.
thought that maybe you could do also embroideries with it if you somehow can connect with a new uh, saving machine.
A new saving machine.
Yeah, because nowadays some of the machine can run code or something,
Mhm.
and I think they do the embroideries differently or they
Yeah,
coding somehow because turtle looks like real like you drawing with colors.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, absolutely. Because yeah, I'm sure you could connect it with some kind of like stitching machine or something, and then program
Yeah.
how it would look, how you'd want it the design to be, and you could try it out on Turtle first. Yeah, it's a good idea. And
Okay.
I'm sure it's done, and I'm sure it's being done already um by people. So yeah. Um, Also, there are certain things that we wouldn't do. So there's some things that are great here, but for example, from Turtle import all, we wouldn't. This is a very old way of importing in. But then later on, there's not much. There's sometimes a bit of inconsistency. So can you see here, import Turtle as T? So this is how it's recommended to import it in. So yeah. So there are
But
certain things
for
that
example, the trickle didn't say this.
what didn't say that. Sorry.
Like I tried this turtle on the trickle because is this tutorials on it and it's just only said it how you do it, like import turtle. That was the only.
Yeah, that's fine. So that's how I would
Yeah.
recommend you import it in import turtle. Don't bother with from import. That's a very old way of importing and it confuses things.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
no worries. Right, yeah, awesome. So import matplotlib.py and instead of wanting to write this, like instead of being able to write this each time, because this is quite long, what we can do is we can rename it. So we can say as PLT. And that means that anytime I refer to PLT, I know that this is what I'm referring to, instead of having to write that out again. So I could even import this as like O, but it just you want names that are kind of visible later and you're able to understand when you read the code what you're actually doing. So that's why we're doing PLT.
Okay, so for a second, why do you writing like this, like matplotlib.pilot as PLT?
Okay, so import matplotlib.py plot. So this is the actual library we want information from, and this is the
Ah,
section of that library that we want information from. So if you look up the documentation, there's loads of different bits for matplotlib. We want the py plot, so that just stands for Python.
okay.
All right. We're just
Yeah.
saying as PLT just to make sure just to save time so we don't have to write this every time. We can just write PLT and then Python will know that means this.
And what is mean PLT?
Yeah, no, it's just a short way, right? I could say plotting if I wanted to. It doesn't matter. It's just what you want
Ah,
to.
okay.
Yeah. It's just a variable. Yeah. Okay, cool. So now what we want to do is we want to start writing the function to create. So we want to create an Excel file first, all right? So what we want to do is we want to create a function. So we're going to create a function. So def create Excel file. In my brackets, I want to put in file name. So we will pass in a file name for this function, and that'll be what we want to create. And I'm just going to write a comment here. So this part is to create a new Excel file and add in some data that we want to do. So just a quick little bit about Excel before we get started on this, because it'll just make more sense. So when you create an Excel document, I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with it, but essentially first you create a workbook. Then from the workbook, you then have sheets. Okay. So you have a workbook and then you have sheets. So what we need to do is we can't just create a sheet straight away. We need to also, with Python, create a workbook and then create the sheet. So what I'm going to say is workbook equals, and we're going to say, oh, so we're from the library, which is OpenPyXL. What we want to do is we want to get the workbook function, okay? And that's what's going to create a workbook. And the next thing we want to do is, so remember our task is to create a sales data manager, all right? That's just quite an ambiguous way of just being able to program it here. So what we want to do is we want to create a sheet. So our sheet's going to be equal to an active sheet in the workbook, all right? So workbook.active, all right? So that's the sheet we're actively working with. So that's going to be called sheet. We could have probably called it something better, but what we're going to do is we're going to call it a label, okay? We're going to give it a label, and then that way it'll be clearer what it is. So sheet.label, we're going to say we want that equal to whatever we want to call it. So I'm going to call it data. So that's creating a sheet. So if you had an Excel document open, the bottom corner, whatever the sheet you'd want to call it, data, that is what we're creating here.
Can I ask, does it matter? You've got on line 6, you've got workbook with a capital, and then on 7, it's workbook with small. That's just your choice, right? Or does it have to be capital or small?
This is, okay, so this is your variable. So this doesn't matter what you call it. I would always keep variables lowercase letters. That's just convention. So this is always pretty much lowercase. Here, we're using a function from this Python file. That function is spelt with a capital letter in the library. So we have to.
See. Okay. Okay, thank you.
No worries. Good question. Just gonna open an Excel sheet so I can actually show you guys what. So like, here, for example, so you've got your Excel sheet. So the workbook is what the main document is, so the whole document. And then the sheet is this bit here. So where it says left wing, central, merged sheets. So this is what we're naming right now. So we've just created one called data within your workbook. Well, we've not created it yet. We're just creating the function that would do this. Right. So what we need is now to make a table, we want headers. Okay. So what we want to do is we're going to specify the headers. And what we're doing, because it's a monthly sales chart, we're going to create a table that has month and the sales. Okay. So very simply, in order to store 2 bits of information in one place, we're going to use a list. So headers equals, and I'm going to say months, comma, sales. Right. So each month, I'm going to have whatever the sales are. All right. And then what we want to do is we want to add this to the list. So add this to the sheet, sorry. So we're going to say sheet.append headers. And then I'm just going to add in one comment here just to say what this is doing. So I'm saying add headers. So again, you don't have to do your comments. It just means that so you can follow it later on so you understand what we're doing. Is everyone clear with everything so far? Does anyone have any questions, or are we okay? Do we understand what's going on?
This might be running ahead, but does it matter if we don't have Excel on our computer?
No, it doesn't, because we're not actually, what we're doing here is we're going to create the file, but we're not actually going to open the file. We're just going to read it back right into Python.
And can we do the same with iOS?
Yeah, it doesn't matter, because it's just going to create it in, it should just create the file here for you.
Okay, so you
So
can
we're
then
going
download
to
it.
do the same like in the previous class with the CSV.
Yeah, well, with the CSV, do you remember how you would click it and then you could actually see what was in the CSV?
Yeah, but the code created actually.
Yeah, exactly. The code created it. So similarly here, the code is going to create an
Oh,
Excel file, and also but the thing is, we won't be able to see the Excel sheet because we
okay.
can't open it. But as long as we can read it back into the code, it's fine. Yeah, good questions. Good questions. Right. We're gonna now add some sample data in. So I'm gonna say data equals, and I'm creating a 2D list. So that means I'm creating a list within a list. So I've got a list. So I'm just making it on new lines just so it's created separately. I'm indenting it once, and then I'm creating another list. And the reason why is because we want to store each item with its pairing. So we want to have row one, we want January and however many sales for Jan, then February, however many sales for Jan, and we want to keep them together. And then we want to keep the entire thing in one thing, and then we want to keep that in data. So I'm going to say January, comma, and then however many sales. Again, this is sample data, so you can have whatever you want. I'm just going to go between the 100 to like 800 range. So I'm going to say January 100 equals 150, and then comma, next line, February, comma, 200, etc. So I'm just going to let you guys populate that for all of the months. So
And sorry, does it have to be a number and a word, or can we put two words together? Or I'm just thinking.
well, we're going to plot the sales as a figure,
Oh,
right?
okay. I'm just wondering, but for other things, can you when you have data, it doesn't have to be numeric. It can be all non-numeric. Sorry, not the simplest question. I'm just.
No, that's absolutely fine. It can be non-numerical data, but again, for the plot that we're going to do today, it's a line graph, but you won't be able to plot a line graph without numbers. So you could then plot a bar chart, right? You could plot something else, a pie chart, I guess, or something like that. Or something that would be able to handle non-numeric data. But yeah, any other chart would be fine. But for this, we're just going to keep it numeric. But yeah, in theory, absolutely fine. What you said. Um, so here's one I made earlier. So you guys can just plot it in for 10 months. Again, these numbers, you can have absolutely any you want. You don't need to follow my pattern of it increasing each time. You can keep it increase, decrease, however you like it.
There was just an email from America. I don't know if you've seen it in
Yeah.
on email. Maybe you might want to answer.
Yeah, just not receive the recordings. I'm gonna I don't handle the recording myself, sorry, so I'll just let
I look for it as well, so this is, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, Anthony mentioned it earlier as well. So we're gonna yeah, I've already noted it down and I'm gonna chase it up and make sure someone
Oh,
says
lovely, thank you.
no worries. But because there has been a delay in the recordings, you will get a delay in your assignment. So don't worry in terms of getting that done in time. So we will give you extensions to make sure you have enough time to handle and complete all the assignments. And when you guys are done, can you just give me a thumbs up and I will move on once everyone's managed to do
Sorry, do the tabs matter?
the indent?
Yes.
Yes, indents do matter.
Okay.
Python's very particular about its indents.
Yes, I fight with debugging when I've missed a particular indent.
It's an indent out. The thing is, this I've only done on different lines just to make it easier to read. You literally could have it all in one line like this.
That's what I was wondering, is can you have it all in one line? Because I've just put it all in one line.
Yeah, you can have it
And I'm
exactly.
about to, I was gonna press run to see if it worked.
Yeah, this is absolutely fine. And again, yeah, like you said, if you want to just test if it's working, if you run it and nothing happens, it means it's fine.
Great.
And if you run it and there's an error, then you know something's wrong with the indent. Although I believe here it won't matter too much. No, it's more about the beginning and the end of each line. Oh, Adele's done. Awesome.
Sorry, can you have, so the first bracket and the last bracket, can they be on the same line? Can the entire text, oh, okay, I'm just gonna run it. Yeah, it seems to be.
So yeah, so like everything can be on one line. So it's not, but your open bracket and closed bracket need to be at the beginning of all of the brackets and then at the end of all of your brackets. So you need to
Okay.
have one that starts it off and one that finishes it off, and then all your code needs to be inside it. But it can all be on one line. That's fine. So right at the beginning, if you were doing it all on one line, you'd have two at the beginning and two.
It's worked for me. But I mean, it's really tricky. You've got to have it, you know, as you have it there, four lines indented, 3 lines indented. I mean, it's really tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets a bit confusing, and you are literally welcome to put it all on one line if that makes it easier.
But you see, there has to be 4 indents for the word January or for the beginning, but for the bracket at the end, it has to be 2 indents. Do you see what I mean?
Oh, this one, I'm pretty sure it would be fine if you did it 4 indents as well. Yeah, that wouldn't matter. I just stylistically did it a bit. You could have it as 2, you could have it as 4. That's not an issue. The end one. If you want it all in like one place, that's fine.
Can you go to the very beginning of the code? I think I did a typo somewhere. Not P. Oh, add an extra P. That's what it is. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. Anthony's done as well, I believe. Okay, what I'm gonna do, yep, so I just done, okay, awesome. I'm gonna move on. And the thing is, this bit, you guys, if you are a bit behind, that's fine. You can just fill it up. It's not, or you can have less months. It's really not an issue. Right. So what we want to do is we want to add this to our Excel sheet, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, again, in line with data. So this is the important bit about the indent. So we're going to say for row in data. So for each row within the data, which is each of these, we want to do sheet dot append, exactly the same as here, data. So then you can see from this line, you'd get month sales being in the Excel sheet. And then after that, we'd get January 150. Next line, February 200. Next line, March 250, etc., etc. All right. So again, this is just a for loop we've looked at in many lessons before. So for each row within this data list, we're going to say sheet.append data. And then because this bit was relatively simple, I'm just going to keep going. So in line with 4, we're going to say workbook dot. So basically what I want to do now is I want to save the file because we've just created it. So I'm going to say workbook.save file name, which we're going to then populate later. But for now, it's just the file name that we passed in here. Workbook.save file name. And then we know we've saved it, but to tell the user, we're going to say, I'm going to create an F string. The Excel file name in curly brackets, because we want to say which file it is, was created successfully. Again, this message is completely optional and you don't need to use an F string. You can literally just say it was saved, created successfully. The user should know what they just entered to put the file name in, but we just want to make it nice and neat. Yeah, simple as that for the create.
Could you show the end of this line, please?
Yeah, of course.
Can I? Thank you.
No worries. Let me see if I can just make it wider.
Sorry, where did you define file name?
File name is here. We've not defined it yet. We've passed it in as a parameter. Yeah,
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
no worries. So when we call the function, we'll put in the file name later on in the code.
Just while we're waiting, I have a question. If you were to want to do a print, and instead of file name, you just had already defined something, what would you type in? So instead of the word file name, if you defined file name as you gave it a file open or something, or you know, how would it recognize what you've defined? Is it the same thing, the two brackets?
Yeah, so the thing is, whatever you stored your name in, so let's say you called it open or you've called it sheet 1 or workbook 1 or whatever, you'd have saved that in a variable that has a name, right? So you'd pass in whatever name you put for that variable, and then it would find it from there. So for example, if I had it as name equals Arjun and I wanted the Excel file Arjun was created successfully, all I do is pass in name here.
Okay, great, thanks.
No worries. And that's exactly what this is doing, because file name we've not defined yet. Whatever we pass in, it will then put in here and say successfully. All right. You'll see it in action later on, and then it'll make sense. The thing with functions is it's like you're preemptively assuming something's going to happen in advance. So I'm assuming file name is going to happen, even though we've not actually defined it anywhere in our code yet. Def doesn't actually run any of this because we've not called it. We don't have a main. So yeah, this is all like preemptively presuming what's going to happen. Usually when you'd code, what you'd do is you'd start from main and you'd say, okay, what functionality do I need? Okay, I need to create a file. Then you'd go and create your def and go to the top and write it down. And then you know what you're calling, what you're putting in, that kind of thing. If like you're trying to come up with your own program. Right, what I'm going to do is is everyone okay for me to move on? And is everyone clear with everything I've said so far? Yes, Adele, sorry.
Yep, you can move on.
Okay, awesome. Right, so what we want to now do is we want to create functionality to read the file, okay? So what we want to do is we want to be able to read the data from it. So we're going to say def And remember, this is all the way back in line with the def here. All right. So the def right at the top. So you can see the def here and def here are in line. And we're going to say read Excel file. And again, we need a file name that will pass in later on. All right. But we're going to assume that we will always have a file name that we want to open. Right. For this, we want to load in the workbook because remember, we've not loaded in a workbook yet. We've created it in another function, but we need to know which one to open up. So we're going to say workbook equals open pyxl dot, and this time we're going to use, instead of create a workbook, because we don't need to create it. What we're going to say is load underscore workbook. All right. So we're going to say and we're going to give in the file name because now we have a name of the file we want to thing. So this functionality is going to look for a workbook called file name, and then it's going to load it in. And then what we want to do is we want to choose which sheet we want to work with. So we're going to say sheet equals workbook dot active. Exactly the same as before.
Sorry, what does active mean again? What is the exact reason for using that word active?
So it's choosing the active sheet that we want to work with. Okay. So
And how does it know which is the active sheet?
dot active. Right. Let me show you. Sorry, my computer's been extremely slow today. Right. Okay, so in order to try and define this, right. Okay. If you guys have done, I know some of you guys have done programming before, right? So I'm gonna tell you this in a programming way, and then I'm gonna try and break it down in a way that everyone will understand as well, because it is good to understand this. But if you've done programming before, dot active is it's using a getter, and it's using a setter, all right? So we'd set the function automatically, and then you'd get from there, okay? So that is how dot active will basically find the correct worksheet, all right? In terms of this, all I would say that you need to know is if it's going to automatically presume if you don't if an Excel sheet only has one sheet, it knows that that is the only active sheet, because if you really don't have much of a choice, right? If you only have one sheet in there. If you have multiple sheets, what we then do is we then define which sheet that is the one we want to use as the active sheet. Does that make sense? So essentially, because this workbook only has one sheet, we don't need to go any further than just saying dot active, because there's only one sheet that is there. So that has to be the active sheet.
Yeah, for a second, for curiosity, if there is more sheet, how do you define it? Do you do another concatenation?
Okay, so if what you then do is you then pass in the title, all right? So what you would do is, let me see if I can get an example. Mm. Dot sheet. Sorry, guys, bear with me. Right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to that question, right? And the reason why is I just need to look into whether the getter and setter, we need to do that in advance. So we need to do it in a way where we need to define it, or if we can just pass it in as a parameter. I don't think you can pass it in as a parameter. I think you have to go about it a different way. Okay. But I will come back to that question and I'll answer it by the end. All right.
Thank you.
Good
And
question.
Yes.
what does ITER rows mean? What you've just
I'm going to come on. I'm going to come on to that.
Oh,
all right?
sorry, that's the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to come on to that. Right. So that's the next bit. So, right. So we're going to say data equals. So the next bit is what we want to do is in order to print this out, we're going to say data equals, and we've got our list that we want to populate. When we read in the data from the Excel sheet, we want to add it into a list called data. All right. So then what we need to do is we need to go through the sheet and we need to get the values that we want. Okay. So we're going to say for row in, so we're going to say for row in each sheet, and we want to iterate through the rows. Okay, and right. So essentially, it's doing something like this. That's what iterrows is doing. It's going through it. It's going through each row. Okay? Right. So that's just an example of what's happening. So we're going to say sheet dot iter underscore rows. It's just iterating through. Iterating just means going through. All right. So we're going to say sheet dot iter rows. And what we're going to say is, right, so in an Excel sheet, if I go back onto here, you can see here, can you see there's like blank rows, right, afterwards? And there's always going to be blank rows in an Excel sheet after whatever table you have. When we get to the bottom of, when we go through like this and we get to the end where we don't need to go through it anymore, we don't want to keep going all the way till the end of the workbook, because it'll go up till infinity, or like it'll go up till however the maximum length of the file is. All right. So what we want to do is we want to say only go up to where there are actually values within the row. So what we're going to say is here, we're simply going to say values only equals true. And that'll mean only do this values only equals true. Okay. And what that'll mean is just go through until and find it when there is an actual value in there. Don't bother if there's nothing in there. Just move on. All right. Now what we're going to say is we're going to say data.append row, because we just want to append whatever data's in there to row. Sorry, that made absolutely no sense. We're going to append to data whatever is in each row. Okay, whatever's in each row, we're going to add it into the data. So then for the example for the first one, because it'll be month sales, it'll literally read month sales, and that'll be the first line, and that'll go in there. And then it'll be Jan 150, Feb 200, etc. Right, that's all of the functionality for that bit done. Then all we need to do is, because it's a function and we want the output actually given back to us, we're going to say return data. All right. And then we'll print it out afterwards. So we're going to just say, when we call this, read all the stuff and then return it back to wherever we called it from. So we're going to return it back to main.
Should we press play or run?
Yeah, you press run and nothing happens. That means you've done it all right.
Okay.
Okay, so in terms of how to make a different one, like you guys were saying before, how do we make that, how do we set it as a different sheet if we had loads of different sheets? Again, these 3 lines are optional, so if you're doing it now, just ignore them. But what you do is first you want to know what sheet names you have, right? So you can just print all the sheet names by saying print workbook.sheet names, and that'll print all the sheet names, so you can then select which one you want. What you then do is choose which sheet name you want. So here it says sheet 2, but let's say you had so the first one we had was data. Let's say we had another sheet called data 2. That's the sheet I want to set as the active sheet. Then all I do is I'm going to say workbook.active. So right now it's the default one, so the first one, but we want to set it equal to. So we're going to say workbook.sheet names. So that's how we got all of the sheet names last time. But we're going to say dot index. So we're going to choose the number of which one it is. So if it's right, so if I had here, so this index would be 0, this would be 1, this would be 2, similar to how like computers always choose program. So we're going to say the active workbook is going to be the index, whatever index that this is. So desired sheet, whatever we've said here, we want to get that index, and that's the index we want to use for the active book. And then after that, everything will be the same. All right, so that's how you change the active book. Does that answer you guys' questions? About if you wanted to change
Can you just go back to what you just had?
To what we just had before.
Yeah. Sorry, no, you're that was fast. Is what I'm trying to say. Ugh, I missed it.
What do you want me to go through the whole thing again? Was that?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. My Python crashed. My Trinket crashed, so I was a bit.
Okay. So in terms of this is all the stuff you need for now, and
Yeah.
you guys.
Okay, then don't worry. We can talk about it later. I think we're time constrained. Don't worry. I missed it.
Yeah. Okay, no worries. I mean, it's on the recording now, so if you want to go back and watch that when it gets sent out, then that'll explain that bit. All right. Cool. So. Right, moving on to the next bit. Right, so the next bit that we're going to do is we want to visualize our data. So we're going to say def, we're going to create a new one, and we're going to say visualize. All right, and we want to visualize data. And we want to visualize whatever data we pass in, right? Because we're not visualizing a file name, we want to visualize data. Right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to extract the sales data and the months and sales data. So I'm just going to write a comment here, extract month and sales data. So, all right. So next bit, I'm just going to paste in and then I'm going to explain to you. Right. So months, we're going to have as a separate list, and we're going to have sales as a separate list. So months will we want to end up with Jan, Feb, March, April, May, June, July, August, etc., all the way to December. And I'm saying in a list, so that's why I've got it here, because I want to store what the output is in a list. I'm saying each row 0, because remember, we've got it as a 2D list. So we've got a list within a list, all right? So what we want to do is we want to specify that this is the first item within that, okay? So we want to go through this. And what we're saying is, for row in data 1 onwards, and the reason why I'm doing it from 1 onwards is because we want to exclude the header. So the header right now in your data will have, when you read it, so the way we've done our reading is we're reading everything that is true. So everything that's there. That includes months and sales. And we don't need that when we want to visualize our data because that's just the label, right? That we just want it to visualize. So we want the first part of the line graph to say Jan, then Feb, then March, then April. And then we want the numbers to go from 150, 200. We don't want it to then say sales, all right? Because that doesn't mean anything in a graph. So we're saying from 1 onwards, we want all the information for this in months and for, so that's row 0. So row 0 will be this one. And then row 1 for the sales is 150, 200, 250, 300, etc. So we're going to say row 1 for row in data, and we're going to say for 1 onwards, right? Is everyone clear with what I've just said so far? Or should I say, is anyone confused about anything I've said so far? I could put this comment here as well, because we're excluding the header. Both. Okay, right. So no one's confused. I'm just gonna move on. Right. Let's say, right. What we want to do is we want to create a plot. And with the plot, what I want to do is I want to figure out how much space that I want to have. So I want this figure to have a set figure size so that it's not too big and it's also not too small. So I want to constrain it slightly. So I'm going to say the figure size should be equal to, and then in a tuple, which is just in brackets, I'm going to specify the size. So I'm going to say 10 by 6. All right, so that's a set amount. Fig size equals 10 by 6. That's the dimensions I want it to have.
Sorry, what does the 10 by 6 represent? Number of lines and rows and columns. Yeah?
No. Fig size is, I believe it's, sorry, I'm just going to check whether is it inches or pixels? Inch by inch.
Okay.
So that is that. But again, that's also respective to your screen as well. So it will balance out, and you can change the numbers to try and make it bigger or smaller with what you like. And there are ways to make it even more specific, but we're not going to get into that now. Right. So plt.plot. So the next line I'm saying is plt.plot. Dot plot means plot a line graph. All right. It would be dot bar for bar graph. It would be dot scatter for scatter. Or scatter plot, or one of the two. But plot just means line graph. All right. So what we want to do is we want to plot the months by the sales. So that is as simple as what we write in here, month by sales. Right, that is all we are going to write there. But what we want to do is we want to just design it so it looks slightly better. So for each plot, what I want to do is I want a point, all right? I don't want just a line graph through it. I want to point at each point that actually has data. So what I'm going to write is I'm going to write marker equals, and we want like an O-shaped marker, like a dot. So we're going to say marker equals. This bit is all optional. Everything I'm writing now is optional. You don't have to have it in. All you'd need for this is month and sales, what we're plotting. We're just making it look a bit nicer. All right. I'm going to say the line style that I want to use. So I want a straight line. I don't want a dotted line or anything. So I'm going to say line style equals, and I'm just going to put a dash in there, and that'll just be one continuous line between the points. And then I want the color blue. I want it to be a blue line. So I'm just going to say, comma, color. You need to spell it American. So you need to have it COLOR because Python uses American English, as does most programming languages. So color equals, and I'm going to say B for blue. You could literally write blue in if you wanted to write blue. You can write red in. You can change it. But B just means blue, all right? Because it's RGB. RGB. That's it. Right. PLT.plot months sales marker. Right. What I'm then going to write is I'm going to write PLT.title. I'm going to give it a title and I'm going to label the x-axis and the y-axis. So I'm just going to do a skip to what I wrote earlier. Skip to what I wrote earlier. PLT.title, monthly sales data. X label is this. Y label is sales. All right. And then I want a grid. So I'm going to say grid. You don't, again, have to have this. I'm going to say I want a grid behind the line graph. You didn't need this, but you can do it. And then in order to actually get it to show, we need to write plt.show. Okay. Or it's not going to show anything. So we're going to say plt.show. Sorry, guys, I know we ran over, but I feel like we tend to anyway. And okay, so just with this bit, this is everything we're going to write for the visualization, by the way. So this is it. Has anyone got any questions with what I've written? I especially went through the last bit quite fast, but if anyone has any questions, please let me know now. Any bits?
Why PLT grid true?
It just has a grid in the background of the line graph. This is optional and you do not need it.
Ah, so you wanna see it, that's why true is a built-in option. Okay.
That's right, yeah. So if I didn't want it, I would just, I wouldn't write this at all, to be honest. I'd just get rid of it completely. But if you wanted to set it to false, you can set it to false.
Okay, thank you.
And T has to be capital. That's important. So it changes color and it's a Boolean data type. No worries. Right. I'll give it one more minute and then let me know, guys, if you're okay for me to continue.
Ooh, it's just fallen off my screen.
What's fallen off your screen?
The oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. I don't know what happened there. And all the PLTs have to be on separate lines as well. Is that correct?
That's right, yes. So each line is doing something completely different. So the first one's doing the figure, the second one's doing the plotting, which graph you're doing, that is for doing the title, etc. So because they're all different functionalities, all on different lines.
Can I send you my Python link? Because I've got an error when I'll just, can I put it in the chat? Because I've got an error for some reason.
No worries. Yeah, of course. I'll have a look.
There we go.
What did you wrote in line 10?
Line 10,
Yes, please.
right to the top. Yeah, here you go. It's just a comment.
No, line 8. This is sheet label or sheet data?
Sheet dot label, and then it's going to be equal to
Ah.
data.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Should it say sheet dot title? Bear with me 1 second. I think I've done this wrong.
Yeah, you should say title. I had to correct mine.
Yeah, sheet dot title. Sorry, I don't know why I wrote label. That should say sheet dot title.
It's so strange that the code didn't give this error.
Yeah, because sheet dot label is a function. It's because I just wrote it wrong, so it's doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, no, it's like I tried to run it and they started to saying me an error on the line, like where there was no error.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
why.
Well, sorry about that. I'm glad that's been pointed out
It's
now.
okay.
Right. Okay. So Anthony, I'm just gonna have a look at yours. Right, okay. Sorry, so this should say title. So this was my fault. Said that wrong. I think okay, you're trying to call it already. Okay. Right. So file name is file name dbt equals read Excel. Okay, so you can't have line 94. Okay. Think I might have figured out what is wrong. Let's try this. Excel workbook. Anthony, I'm just having a look at your code. Bear with me. So another thing, the file name was spelled wrong here on line 557. Okay, so we're having so
Okay.
okay. So here for row in data, we want to append row. We don't want to append the whole data.
Oh,
All right.
yes.
Okay, and then it's just a mistake of spelling file name wrong, I think, in a few places. We just need to fix that here. Also you'll need to, I know you're calling it already, just wait until I show you how to call also
Okay, sure.
how to call the data, because this bit's fine, but line 94 you're not going to be able to do it like that way, but the rest of it's fine for
Okay,
now.
sure.
All right, no worries.
Okay, that's fine.
Cool, great work. Right, so let me just have a look at okay, so 1 second, Ingrid, I'm just going to open yours up now. Okay. Here you need a colon on line 32, Ingrid.
There isn't one. There is a colon.
There was on the
Sorry,
one.
put it in there. You got it. Got it. Simple things. Okay, thanks.
There you go. And then here as well, you've got, yeah, and you don't need this. You've got an extra figure in there.
Okay.
And then for row in data, data is not defined. Line 17. This needs to be indented. And then you're appending row, you're not appending data. Workbook is not defined. Here, yeah, this all needs to be indented. That's all it is.
So
There we go. So yeah, so all of these lines 17 to 21 need to be indented. Line 18, you need to append row, not data. And then here as well, sheet.label. Okay, so this should be sheet.title. So that was my fault. And then here it's an equal sign, not a dash on line 9. I think that's all right after that.
that's it. That's it. Thank you. Gosh, so many.
No, that's all right. Right. Okay, so the next bit, what we want to do is we want to create our main. So we want to create, so this is similar to how we do pretty much every week. We're going to write def main, open brackets, close brackets. And this is where our program's going to stem from. And then here, what we're going to write is, I'm going to write a file name. So my file name equals, I'm going to call it sales underscore data dot xlsx. So it's the new file extension for Excel, not the old one. So then I'm just going to call the function to create the file. So I'm going to say create Excel file. Is we're going to call the library, call the function, create Excel file that we've created above here. And then open my brackets, and then I'm going to put in file name, which is what I've specified it as. Yeah. Then what we want to do is let's just do one thing at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the read data from first. So we're going to say so I'm saying read data from Excel file, and then I'm going to say data equals read. So we want to store the output in a list. So I'm going to say read Excel file name. On the next line, I'm going to say, I'm just going to print a message saying this data from Excel file. I just put a colon. And then on the next line after that, so to actually print it, we're going to say for row in data, we want to print the row. All right, because remember it's 2D list. We don't want to print it like that. We want to print it row by row. Okay, now just to show you that, I'm going to go back out. I'm going to say if so if there's a main, which there will be, we're going to call main. Now, if I run my code, oh, I'm getting the same error. I think I've got the same issue. There we go. So the Excel file salesdata.xlsx was created successfully. And data from the Excel file, you can see here months, sales, then Jan, Feb, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. You can see here a file has just popped up that says salesdata.xlsx. If I wanted to download this and run it on Excel, I can do, but you don't need to. You can't view it with Trinket, but it's there and it's created. And that's what it's being read from. And we know that's working because the read functionality is working fine. So just have a go at this and hopefully that'll work for you. And just give me a thumbs up if that's all okay.
Can I ask what it would be if you wanted to do a numbers file? Because if we ever wanted to do this for real, I don't have Excel.
Again, you wouldn't need Excel. As in
Yes, Excel. Yes, exactly.
So a numbers on Apple again. So if you were you'd need a completely different library. Yeah, because this won't work with. I'm sure you could open up an XLSX file with numbers.
It translates it. You're right. It does. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah. So I think that's your best course of option. Because if not, if you want to just work with a native numbers file, you'd have to use a completely different library. But as long as this is able to be translated, it's fine. I mean, in all cases, we don't even need to see it because right now we can see it works without even opening it.
And the 2 underscores that you have at the end, yeah, around name and main, yeah.
Okay, so this was explained last week and the week before. So this is just the convention of basically saying, if this exists, if there is a function called main, then we want to run it. This doesn't need to be main. I can call this any other function either. I can say if visualize data is there, run visualize data. That's fine. So this is just a convention of Python saying, does this function exist? All right. And that's all you'll do. Yeah, and then you pretty much hard code this every time you write a program. All right. Okay. Now to do the visualization part. So I'm hoping everyone's works so far. Oh, I can see. Yeah, Anthony's got yours working. Awesome. Right. So the next bit that we want to do is we want to visualize data. So we want to call that function here. And what we want to do is we want to pass in data. Okay, which is what we've read in from here. Now, if I run this through, you can see here, a little graph pops up. Sales, monthly sales data, month, Jan, Feb, March, April. You can see there's a grid here. So that's what the grid was for, to have the grid at the background. You can get rid of the grid if you want.
I get two graphs. Is that I apparently have done something wrong?
You want to share your code with me, Ingrid? I'll have a look.
Sorry, that wasn't for you. That was for me.
Oh, okay.
The moan. I don't know what's going on here.
That's all right. Just share your code and I'll have a look.
So oh no.
One second. All right, I'm just getting that for you. Okay. It's working fine for me.
I get two for some reason.
Let me try again. No, yours is working absolutely fine.
You have expenses CSV, if I may ask.
Oh, that's my old.
I think that's just not been deleted from the
Yeah,
previous
so-
week. There we go. Yeah, no, everything's working absolutely fine on my side. Can you see it's the exact same code that you just sent me? It's running up. Just try and run it again.
Yeah, no, I ran it again and now it doesn't show up too. It comes after a while because I've got a slow computer. All right, thanks. Weird.
Okay. Yeah, not sure. I mean, you're only calling it once. Let's see here. PLT.show. Yep, you're only showing it once. So yeah, it should just be. Yeah, it should be fine. It might just be bugging out the website, but your code's fine, so I can't see that being an issue.
All right.
Yeah, and we've not got any of our code in a loop, so it shouldn't loop over. Right. Okay, so that is everything that we have to cover for today. Does anyone have any other questions about anything we've just written?
Yeah, I just would ask back some detail. In the end, when we use the if name aqua main, is always like that, or there is different option?
It's always like this. This is just one of those things that you just have to know and do, and it's like you don't really explain it. It's just that's how it is. Okay. In other
Is that
languages,
always the main function is like this?
all main functions are like this. In other languages, like Java, you also have this. You just don't need this. You just call main by itself like this. But in Python, this is just the way you call name.
Okay. Because to be honest, it's like, yeah, as you said, in JavaScript, you basically don't make this difference. You just call it like a last line and that's
Like
it.
you just call it here. I think the reason why, and I kind of do understand it, is if you've got any mistakes with your main, or if you've written main incorrectly, then rather than your program crashing, it just won't run. Whereas if you've spelt main wrong or you've done something wrong with main and you didn't have it, then it would just crash if you had line 77 all the way to the end. So I think that's why the distinctions here, again, to be honest, that's something we need to ask the people who develop Python. I have no idea. That's just how you call main.
Okay. And another one again in the visualize data function.
Mhm.
Would you explain again the Montag wall row 0 for in data
Okay,
and the next line?
sure.
That,
So right
no,
now,
there. That
Yeah.
too.
so this one, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one here, row 0, so that is basically the first bit of this, right? So Jan, Feb, March, April, May, June. So that's what we're directing it to, okay? So what we're saying is for each row within that data, so, right. Okay, so to explain this, right? So data 1 onwards, so data, so this is all data, right? So this entire thing is
Mhm.
data. 1 onwards means right now, not in this sample data, but when we're reading the file, we have to remember that months and sales is inside here too, right? So like this, here.
That's why the 0 is not.
That's why this is starting from 1. Yeah, because
Yes,
we
I
don't
get
want,
it.
yeah, we don't want to include month and sales, right? Then
Yes.
saying is for each row that you get, we only want the 0 item. So we only want Jan, we only want Feb, we only want March. We don't want the numbers. Okay. For the month, and then for the sales, it's the exact same thing. We ignore the first line, but we want the first item. So we want 150, 200, 300, and that'll all be stored in one list. Make sense?
Okay. Yes, thank you.
No
That's
worries.
it.
That's it. Perfect. Anyone else? Any other questions? Everyone's okay with that? I will move on to talking about your assignment for this week. Right, so this is just how to upload your code. This is all relatively exactly what we've done before. Right, so your weekly assignment this time is to managing employee attendance in Excel. So what we want to do is we want to record. So this time we want to have options. So we want to record attendance, view all attendance records, or quit the program. Okay. We're not really too fussed about the quitting the program bit. As long as you can record attendance and view attendance, that's fine. The user should be able to record attendance. So employee name, the date, and the status, whether they were present or not. And then you need to save it to an Excel file. So again, this is not 2 anymore. We're looking at 3 different items. Also, what you need to do is to be able to record it rather than having a hard-coded list like this. Here we had a hard-coded list. My hint is that whatever functionality you create to ask the user to enter these details needs to be stored in exactly the same way that we've stored this in a 2D list. Okay, but the only thing is you'll have 3 different items in here. Okay, that's the hint I'm going to give you, but you need to give the functionality for that using what we've done previously. Viewing all the attendance records, very simple, exactly how we've done this before, and implement data visualization to show a trend in the attendance. All right. And that'll be exactly. So these two are pretty much similar, exactly the same / similar to what we've done today. It's just this bit, that's the new bit that's adding stuff in. All right. Everyone clear with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So that is everything, I believe, for today. Drop-in sessions, I will make sure that Saturday there is no issues and I will debug it again. I'm not sure why that keeps happening to us, but we will ensure that doesn't happen this week. All right. But other than that, everything seems okay. And yeah, if anyone doesn't have any other questions, I'll end the meeting there.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks a lot.
No worries.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Oh, Ingrid, did you want me to go over? Did you have any?
I was just thinking about that. I'm sort of lost now because I need to go and review all my questions because I've just had a class, and someone's about to appear as well at 11
okay.
o'clock.
No worries.
People.
Well, I'll let you go.
So what I can do is can I just email you my very simple questions and go through it. I end up spending hours looking for it's really hours looking for answers to some of these questions, which is not the best use of my time. So if I just write them all down and ask you in a big email, it should be pretty straightforward. And we can even just, maybe, the thing is I can't come on Saturday. I've got
No worries. is we'll okay, well, send it in an email. Anything that I can't answer in an email, next week's session, I'll either have it all done right at the beginning so we can quickly just go over everything, or
Uh-huh.
do it at the end of next week's session.
And sorry, what's your email? I'm sure I have it, just to be on the safe side.
So it'll just be the hello@codingwithcodex.co.uk.
Okay, great, thank you.
I will just give me 1 second. Let me just quickly double check that as well. I just want to make sure that I've given you the right one. Yeah, it is hello@codingwithcodex.co.uk. So yeah, that's the email. If you've got any questions, if you see any other Codex email, just send it through if that doesn't work, and then we'll go through that. Okay.
Okay, great, lovely, thank you. Sorry, and I feel like because I missed the first 2 Saturday sessions, I'm 2 lessons behind all the time, you know?
No
Anyway,
worries.
all right, thanks very much. Thanks.
No worries. Take care, Ingrid.
Bye.